it's opening doors for you. Did it influence? It obviously influenced career, but did it also influence education?
Yes, I think it's fair to say yes. Although I have a limited formal education, some college, I don't think it propelled me, toward a further educational goal of some sort. I wanted to get in radio, Eric, and by radio I mean commercial broadcasting. And so I would go to the local radio station, whatever that was. We moved around a lot as I was a child, Eric. My mom and dad were both Marines. My mother was one of the first women Marines in the country, and she was a drill instructor, if you can believe that, at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. My dad is was a retired colonel from the Marine Corps, and I was born on Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. So you can imagine I had fairly strict parents. At any rate, I began going to hang out as much as they would let me at local radio stations, meeting the disc jockeys, meeting the engineers, going ooh and ah at the 3500 or 3400, I guess it was, transmitters, and, digging into stuff and just doing everything I could at a radio station, whether it was engineering or it was air work or bringing somebody their coffee, what have you. I did that endlessly as a child, and every day, literally every day, Eric, I was either on ham radio or at some radio station trying to figure out what I could learn and glean and whether I could get a job.
Well, we've had a number of guests on the QSO Today podcast who were engineers at radio stations as kids, because the kids with a first class license walks in the door and he's got the job, but not many of them end up on the air, except maybe because there's a spot in the middle of the night to fill, and the station manager says, well, why don't you fill it, read the news or something like that. How did you end up on the air?
Well, I'm laughing because that ultimately is exactly how I ended up with my big career in radio. Somebody who said, well, I guess we're going to have to put you on at night. But that's a story for down the line, I guess, a little bit. I started, as I mentioned, to finally get jobs. I guess I had a decent voice, and I landed a job at a station in little FM religious station in Franklin, New Jersey. And to get to work, I had to climb this mountain. I mean, it was literally on the mountain. Instead of just putting the antenna on the mountain, the whole thing was there. It was a religious FM station, Eric, and all I did was read the news every hour. But I stayed there full time to do it. And the man who owned and ran this station was of an unusual sort. He had a thing about people who get too close to the microphone. He liked my news, but he thought I got too close to the mic. And so in the middle of a 5-minute newscast, he would walk into the studio, grab the back of the chair, and yank it out from under me. And right on the air, you would hear me take a tumble onto the floor, and he'd start ranting at me. And needless to say, I didn't stay for a long time at that FM station. But that's kind of start I had. Rough start, I guess I had. And then from that point, Eric, I was looking toward, I'm a kid, so I'm looking toward rock and roll radio. And I did secure some jobs at some rock stations. I'm talking about top 40 here. And it did pretty well, actually did pretty well. And then I finally said, the heck with this. I'm going to go in the Air Force. So I took a break from everything, went into the Air Force, all set for a radio career. And they said, no, it looks like you're going to go into, brace yourself, Eric, medicine. So I became a medic. I went to Amarillo Air Force Base after basic training in San Antonio and was a medic, and then made my way to the Far East. Inevitably, you can guess the years. Touchdown in Okinawa. Spent a lot of time in Okinawa, Eric. And, of course, Vietnam, the Philippines, and spent a lot of time in the Far East. Now, when I left the Air Force, I did 4 years in out. Eric, when I left the Air Force, I had fallen in love with the island of Okinawa. And so I wrote a letter. There was a commercial broadcast station at that time. We administered the island of the Ryukyu Islands, were administered by the U.S. Eric. And so there was a commercial broadcast station owned by an Okinawan company, Ryukyu Hoso, actually. I wrote them a letter. They had a rock and roll station that served the GIs on the island. At that time, that was about 250,000 if you included the dependents. And I got an answer, and they said, "Come on to Okinawa. We're going to pay your way, and you can do air work." And so I spent a total of 10 years, Eric, on the island of Okinawa.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're a handy guy. So were you also the station engineer as well as the on-air talent?
No. That was all Okinawans. But it was quite an experience. I fell in love with the Far East, Eric. I remember we had an old teletype machine in a little soundproof room. And the only way that one could get news would be to pick it up by radio. I think there were 2 or 3 different frequencies, but it came from the U.S. by radio. And so if you can imagine, the selective fading that was coming from California, which is where the signal was coming from all the way to Okinawa, typically halfway through a story, it would go into a selective fade and you would have complete garble. So you couldn't just run into this little room and rip. You had to read as well. If you didn't read, you'd get halfway through a story and it'd go in total garble. So that's how we got our news from the Associated Press halfway across the world.
Do you remember the station call letters?
Sure. KSBK.
KSBK.
Yes, kilowatt, sugar, Bravo, kilowatt.
How about that?
And I was a ham there, of course. I was a ham everywhere. I was KR6BK.
What did you schlep along with you as far as ham radio gear when you were in Okinawa?
It wasn't so much a matter of schlepping. For example, to Okinawa, I took very nearly nothing to Okinawa and bought the rig that I wanted, which at that time I believe was a Tempo. Bought it and lived in a little Japanese house with, at that time, a cute little Japanese girl, and had I constructed my antenna on the roof from bamboo.